The night after the high school entrance exam, I was discussing with my husband where to take our twins, a son and a daughter, for a relaxing vacation. He suddenly looked at me seriously and said, "Let's get a divorce. The 2 kids will stay with me, and the assets will be split 50-50. I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. My mouth opened and closed for a while, not knowing what to say. I only felt a surge of bitterness in my chest, quickly spreading to my eyes. As the tears began to fall, my son and daughter returned from outside. Their expressions were calm, and their movements were indifferent, as if they had known this was going to happen. My daughter sat beside me and silently held my hand. My son stood in front of us, expressionless, and said to my husband, "We agree to the divorce. My sister and I will stay with Mom. We want 2 sets of child support, and Mom should get 3/4 of the marital property." Chapter 1. My son and daughter were called to the study by my husband. I snapped out of my immense sadness and hurried to follow them. But just as I raised my foot, I heard Pablo's impatient voice coming through the door. "Lucas! Luna!" I'll say it again, Sandra is just a useless housewife. She can't help you with anything. My son's voice was calm. My sister and I have teachers for our studies. We can take care of ourselves, and we'll have degrees when we graduate. We don't need anyone to help us. My daughter also spoke, her voice as obedient as usual. "Dad, my brother and I are thinking of you. That little assistant of yours, her belly is already so big. If the 2 of us go there, it might disturb her from taking care of the baby." The affair and the illegitimate child were openly mentioned by my own daughter, making Pablo feel embarrassed. His irritable voice softened. I stood outside the door, my heart aching so much that I could hear a ringing in my ears, unable to make out the conversation that followed. When the study door reopened, I had already been crying uncontrollably. Pablo walked out, saw my condition, and his gaze flickered. He lowered his voice and said, "I'm truly sorry. I'll give you the custody of Lucas and Luna. The 3/4 of marital property is yours, but the shares of the joint company we own must be split equally." I sniffed and tried to calm myself. Rationally, I knew this was the best deal I could get, but the overwhelming sadness still left me speechless. "Let's convert the shares to cash." My son Lucas suddenly spoke up. "Mom doesn't understand business operations. If the shares are in her hands, they're only useful if they're liquidated." My daughter Luna also said, "Since we're family, selling them to someone else isn't as good as selling them to Dad. You'll have more shares, and your influence in the company will be stronger. When the company goes public, you'll be able to make a few more rounds." I looked blankly at my son and daughter. The company's shares represent not only wealth but also power. My son and daughter must have sold the shares to Pablo to help him solidify his position in the company. Although they chose me, the blood ties are still there, and they're inclined towards Pablo. Pablo was also surprised that 2 kids who had just graduated from middle school knew so much. Lucas and Luna both smiled sweetly. "Is that okay, Dad?" In the end, Pablo took his eyes away from them and nodded. "Okay, it's settled then. Tomorrow at 8:30, we'll meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau." Chapter 2. Pablo left without hesitation, not even willing to stay for one more second. Thinking about the years I spent with this man, from having nothing to having something now, I always thought that after the storm would come the rainbow, that we could live a simple life with our children, peacefully and lovingly, for the rest of our lives. But I didn't know, he had already changed his heart, had an affair, and even had a child with another woman. I felt like an idiot, living in the dream I had woven for myself. When I opened my eyes, I found an endless abyss in front of me. I dug my nails into my palm. The sharp pain kept striking my rationality, helping me suppress the urge to beg Pablo to stay. "Mom, I'm hungry." Just as I was sinking deeper into my sadness, my daughter suddenly hugged me and whined. "The entrance exam exhausted me. I want to eat a big meal and make up for it." My son also said, "Yeah, Mom, I'm hungry too." Seeing that my children weren't affected by the divorce, I felt a bit of relief. Wiping my tears, I held their hands and asked, "What do you want to eat? I'll make it right now." Lucas, my son, grabbed my hand and spoke in a wrong tone. "Mom, with the marital property and the money from the shares, you're a millionaire now. Can't you take us out for a nice meal?" I smiled embarrassedly. Earlier, for the health of Lucas and Luna, I had personally prepared their meals. The two kids loved eating them. Sometimes, when I made too much, I'd let them take some to their classmates. Those kids also loved it and cutely called me Mom when they saw me. Thinking about those tough but happy days, it felt like just yesterday, but now it seemed all gone. But for the kids, I'll stay strong. Chapter 3. The three of us went to the best hot pot restaurant in the city. The business here was thriving. The sounds of people talking filled the air, and it was lively and bustling, along with the aroma of the food. My mood improved a lot, thinking about how my son and daughter still had the pressure of the next 3 years of high school ahead of them. I tentatively spoke up. Lucas, Luna, although your father and I are divorced, we both love you, and that will never change. I'm not a saint, and I'm not trying to make excuses for Pablo. I just feel that as parents, we have to take responsibility and think about the kids. We can't let their youthful and lively hearts be tainted with gloom and resentment because of the separation of adults. What do I have to resent him for? I want to study, get beautiful, become a goddess. There's too much to do. My daughter Luna placed duck intestines in the hot red broth, counted to 7 seconds, and then scooped them out to eat, her face indifferent. I looked over at Lucas with some concern. My son ate a bite of vegetables and smiled at me, saying, I don't resent him either, and I don't care about him. Mom, you need to learn from me and my sister. You know? The steamy heat blurred the faces of the siblings. Somehow, I suddenly felt that these two children had changed a lot, and had matured a lot. I know. I nodded strongly at my son and daughter. It was a promise to them, but also a promise to myself. Mom, these are your favorite shrimp balls. My daughter interrupted my thoughts, scooping a lot of shrimp balls into my plate with a ladle. No, Mom's favorite is shrimp balls. My son also picked up 2 fried shrimp balls and gave them to me. Thank you, my babies. I picked up the shrimp balls and shrimp slides, one bite at a time. The delicious food slid into my stomach, and somehow, it wasn't as sad anymore. Chapter 4. The next morning, before dawn, I opened my eyes, seeing the empty space beside me. I remembered that Pablo and I had already divorced, although yesterday, with my son and daughter's company, it was somewhat alleviated. After a night, my emotions started to surge again, and my heart ached. I know this sadness is pitiful. I also know that once someone decides to leave, they can never be kept. But I am not the female protagonist in a novel, nor a powerful woman who can command the winds and rain. I'm just one person, a housewife with flaws, who can be fragile. Pablo, as my husband, occupied the first half of my life, and he was the man to whom I gave all my love. Now, with his sudden betrayal and departure, it's impossible for me to feel nothing. At this moment, Luna came to knock on my door. Mom, are you awake? Yes. I rubbed my damp eyes and got up to open the door. My daughter stood at the door, holding a beautiful long dress, with a smile on her face. She said, Mom, this is the dress that my brother and I bought for you. Today, wear this dress to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Huh? I looked at the dress in my daughter's hand, surprised. It was a white long-sleeved dress, with lace trim on the skirt, a waist-cinching design. It was elegant and graceful. I asked worriedly, this dress is so beautiful. Can I pull it off? Of course. My mom is the most beautiful. Luna took my hand and led me to the wardrobe, rubbing her hands together. Hurry and change. Later I'll do your makeup. A long time ago, I realized I wasn't young anymore. I'd been avoiding reality like an ostrich, not loving to look in the mirror or care about how I dressed. Seeing how excited Luna was, I tried not to spoil her mood and nodded. Okay. However, after I finished my makeup and put on the dress, I was somewhat surprised when I stood in front of the mirror. The woman in the mirror was plump and poised, although if you looked closely, you could see the fine lines at the corners of my eyes. They only added to the graceful expression formed after years. I thought, I'm not that old or ugly. With a little grooming, I'm still quite pretty. My son stood beside me, looking at the mirror, his eyes shining. Mom, you really look beautiful. My eyes became a little teary, and I couldn't help but hug both my son and daughter, choking up. Thank you both. My daughter wrapped her arms around my waist and coquettishly said, Mom, if you really want to thank us, take us out to play. We're about to start high school, and after that, we won't be able to play freely again for 3 more years. I immediately agreed. Okay, you choose the destination. Anywhere is fine. Chapter 5. At 8:30 in the morning, my son, daughter, and I arrived punctually at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Pablo was already there waiting. He was accompanied by his assistant, Oriana. Who was his affair partner? Oriana, with a barely noticeable baby bump, stood beside Pablo, her young face full of arrogance. When Pablo saw how I was dressed, his eyes lit up. Oriana, standing beside him, tugged at him in dissatisfaction, her jealousy apparent. Only then did the man snap out of it and awkwardly avert his gaze. My daughter, Luna, walked over and greeted her first. Auntie, why do you keep touching your belly? Are you full and just showing off? You. Oriana's face darkened, and she shook Pablo's arm, urging him to defend her. Pablo, look at your daughter. Pablo frowned, about to speak. But my son, Lucas, stepped in first and scolded Luna sternly. Luna, what's wrong with you? You used to be mischievous, but with Dad protecting you, do you still think you can act the same way? Luna's eyes reddened, and she cautiously looked at Pablo. Dad, I'm sorry. I was just joking. I didn't mean it. Please don't be mad. Pablo paused for a moment, remembering the times when he held his children in his arms, watching them grow smart and well-behaved under his indulgence. Now, even a simple word from them was being nitpicked. Pablo then shifted his attention to Oriana, scolding her. She's just a child. Why stoop to her level? Go wait outside. Chapter 6. With the Civil Affairs Bureau staff as witnesses, Pablo and I submitted our divorce application and signed the divorce agreement. A month later, we would officially receive our divorce certificate. Oriana, clinging to Pablo's arm, deliberately walked in front of the 3 of us. She coquettishly asked, Darling, where shall we go to celebrate tonight? My son lazily interjected, Auntie, that revolving restaurant downtown is pretty good. My parents used to go there for their anniversary. My daughter also suggested, the private restaurant in the suburbs is great too. Last time, my dad drove all the way there just to get food for Mom to cheer her up. My son thought for a moment and said to my daughter, By the way, it seems that every good place to eat or have fun in this city, Dad has taken Mom there. My daughter replied, Of course. Oriana turned red and purple in the face from anger. She reached out to pinch Pablo's arm. Pablo, in pain and anger, couldn't lose his temper due to his pride, and his face was as ugly as Oriana's. It was as if my son and daughter didn't notice, as they held my hand, passed by them, and continued walking forward. My daughter said excitedly, Brother, what do you think? Where should we go for this trip? My son thought for a moment and smiled. Let's go to Thailand. The Thai male models are so handsome, just as good-looking as male celebrities in China. Let's give Mom a feast for the eyes. Sounds good. My daughter clapped her hands and excitedly said, New Zealand works too. With Mom's looks, she really fits the foreign aesthetic. Who knows? She might even find a foreign boyfriend. Behind us, Pablo's face darkened when he heard this. He interrupted. Sandra, are you planning to travel abroad? I didn't want to talk much to Pablo, so I gave a vague response and lowered my head to look at my phone. Taking the kids on a trip is a good idea, Pablo muttered to himself and then added, I have a friend who runs a travel agency. You can go to him. I'll give him a heads up so he can take good care of you on the way. My daughter immediately stopped and coquettishly said to Pablo, Wow, Dad, you're so kind. My son politely said, Thank you, Dad. Of course. Pablo smiled lovingly and looked at Luna and Lucas with satisfaction. He completely failed to notice that Oriana, beside him, was so angry that her teeth were clenched, and her features were twisted. Chapter 7. In the end, I still went abroad with my son and daughter, following Pablo's friend's travel agency. Thanks to him, This trip abroad was quite nice. We visited many countries. There were dedicated tour guides and accompanying translators. Every aspect of our trip, from food to accommodation, was well arranged. My daughter dragged me to take photos in the lavender fields of Provence, and whispered to me, "If you don't take advantage of a good deal, you're a fool. Dad's willing to spend the money, so let's enjoy it." Sis is right. My son, not far away, was fiddling with the camera, smiling and waving. "Come on, look at the camera. Smile." My daughter held my hand and made a peace sign for the camera. Though the pose was cliché, the smile on her face was fresh and new, just like my life after the divorce. Later, my 2 children and I wore traditional Hanfu and took photos in Times Square. We also went to Russia to drive real tanks and shoot with real guns. Looking at the human-shaped targets shot through by bullets, I gradually understood. The 2 kids said they wanted to relax, but in reality, they were trying to cheer me up, thinking about how, in my life, I had poor judgment in choosing men, but the children I raised were so considerate. I love my kids so much. Chapter 8. After returning from the trip, I wanted to find something to do for myself. Pablo's company had cashed out 10 million in shares, which was transferred to my account. 3/4 of the marital assets would be transferred to me soon as well, but I didn't want to sit idly by and wait. So I thought about doing something for myself. After a few days of trying, I suddenly realized that I was quite suited to managing a homemaker's account. I had seen similar videos before. Those bloggers, while taking care of their kids, would film themselves cooking and post the videos on platforms. If the content was good, the editing was smooth, and they added some little personal touches to create a homely vibe, it could attract a large number of food-loving viewers. Once the video traffic grew, they could even feature some products in their account's showcase. If they were good with words, they could also live stream, interact with viewers, and earn some tips. I told my son and daughter about this idea, and they were very supportive. They said, "Mom, as long as you're happy, you can do whatever you want." Encouraged by my son and daughter, I posted my first video making braised pork. Although it didn't go viral, it still got some decent views, and I received a few comments. I know that not everything is successful right from the start, so I was prepared for the long haul. Thus, the days passed in a fulfilling and happy way. Little did I know, as the day to officially receive the divorce certificate approached, Pablo suddenly showed up at my door, saying that he didn't want the divorce anymore. Chapter 9. If this had happened a month ago, I might have felt a sense of relief, some happiness, maybe even some satisfaction. But now, my thoughts are focused on my son, daughter, and my own career, and instead of feeling anything towards Pablo's change of heart, I felt disgust. I asked him, why? Pablo rubbed his hands together, his eyes shifting several times, before finally showing a remorseful expression. "Sandra, I've thought about it a lot recently, and I realized that I still can't let you go. I can't let the kids go." Can't let go? Since our son started middle school, Pablo had been working overtime and on business trips. Whenever I called to ask when he would be back, he would impatiently say I was being pushy and didn't know how to be romantic. Until there was a third party, when he resolutely asked for a divorce. Now, suddenly, he couldn't let go? Do I believe pigs can climb trees? Or do I believe him? Seeing that I didn't say anything, Pablo continued, "Wife, I really know I was wrong. I'm willing to return to the family and live a good life." I took a step back, coldly asking, "Just because you know you were wrong, does that mean I have to forgive you? You're willing to return, but I don't want you anymore, and neither do the kids." After hearing my words, Pablo was stunned for a long time, and in the end, he didn't say anything and left in embarrassment. But I still felt something was off. At first, Pablo was willing to give up 3/4 of the marital property and half of the shares to divorce me. Now he suddenly wanted to come back. What about Oriana? What about the baby in her belly? Does he not want that either? Something must have happened. I used the connections I had built up to investigate, and sure enough, I found the truth. It turned out that Pablo's company had encountered trouble. Chapter 10. Not long ago, Oriana, relying on being pregnant with Pablo's child. Started acting like the wife of the general manager, meddling in company affairs. The company staff was suffering, and several capable employees left. It wasn't just the internal management of the company. Oriana also disrupted the external collaborations. She took matters into her own hands and changed to a new supplier. She claimed it would save the company 5% in costs. But before Pablo had a chance to praise Oriana, he discovered that the parts were defective and unusable. As a result, the parts were all scrapped, and the money spent on them was wasted. Pablo was forced to find a new supplier. Without parts, Pablo's factory couldn't operate, couldn't meet the delivery deadlines, and had to pay penalties for breaching contracts. After several such missteps, Pablo was exhausted and the company suffered serious losses. Originally, with some effort, the company might have had the chance to go public in a few years, but now it was delayed indefinitely, and the shares I had sold to Pablo at a high price were now worth only half of their original value. Pablo, frustrated, had a huge argument with Oriana in front of all the staff. Even pushing her, Oriana couldn't dodge in time, fell to the ground, and bled. Being rushed to the hospital, she is now under observation for her pregnancy. Uncertain whether she will be able to keep the baby, Pablo was overwhelmed, not caring about Oriana. Instead, he set his sights on the money I had, which is why he came to ask for reconciliation. My son and daughter, who had heard about this somehow, reacted indifferently. They just said to me, "As long as it doesn't delay your divorce, it's fine." Chapter 11. The two kids truly had foresight. On the day we were supposed to get the divorce certificate, Pablo didn't show up. It took a long time for him to answer when I called. Pablo's tone was disappointed. "Sandra, do you really have to be this harsh?" I mocked. "What you did back then was far harsher than anything I'm doing now." Pablo mumbled, suddenly silent, too guilty to speak. I wasn't going to be polite either. I warned him, "Your company's image is already bad enough. If you want to make it worse, I, as your ex-wife, wouldn't mind throwing more fuel on the fire, portraying myself as a victim." In the end, Pablo admitted defeat. Half an hour later, he rushed over. This time, he didn't bring Oriana along. The man was wearing the same suit as last time, but the collar and cuffs were wrinkled and stained. His hair was no longer neatly combed, and the stubble on his chin had been left untended for a long time. He looked disheveled and unkempt. I didn't say anything, walking into the Civil Affairs Bureau first. Pablo, with his head lowered, shuffled in behind me. Chapter 12. Finally, the divorce certificate was in my hands. I stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, with a light breeze blowing towards me. The sunlight bathed me, bringing an unprecedented warmth. Pablo grabbed my arm, his tone earnest. "Sandra, I want to talk to you. Let's have a meal together." Having seen how heartlessly he left before, I knew that no matter how much he tried to humble himself now, I wouldn't be moved. But, with Pablo continuing to harass me, I knew that if I didn't settle things once and for all, there would be a next time. So, I reluctantly nodded. Pablo initially planned to take me to the restaurant we used to love, but with him, no matter how delicious the food was, it would all taste like chewing wax. So, I randomly chose a restaurant near the Civil Affairs Bureau and sat down. After handing the ordered menu to the waiter, the private room was left with just the two of us. Pablo had just taken a sip of water when his phone, placed on the table, started vibrating. He looked at the caller ID and immediately hung up. Soon, the phone rang again. Pablo simply blocked the number. After doing all that, he looked up at me, his index finger, middle finger, and thumb unconsciously rubbing together. Having been with Pablo for so many years, I knew that when he made this little gesture, it meant he was scheming in his mind. I didn't feel like playing games. I got straight to the point. "If you have something to say, just say it." Pablo cleared his throat and finally spoke. "I originally promised you 3/4 of the marital assets, and it was supposed to be transferred today, but the company has encountered some difficulties recently. Can we delay it? And the shares you sold for a high price. You should still have tens of millions. Can you lend me some for an emergency? Sandra, I know I've wronged you, And I know asking to borrow money at this time is a bit unreasonable, but we were married once, and the 3/4 of the marital assets can be delayed. I interrupted Pablo's long-winded emotional speech and continued, but based on market rates, you will need to pay me interest. As for the 10 million from selling the shares, I can lend you half of it. My short video platform views had increased recently, and with the sales and live streaming, I could easily afford to take care of myself and the kids. The money in the bank earned less interest than what I would earn lending it to Pablo. Besides, Pablo was, after all, the father of my children. If he made money and later passed away, the kids could inherit it. So, for both emotional and practical reasons, I was willing to help him. Pablo paused for a moment. He probably thought I would take the opportunity to ask him to break up with Oriana, or to act like a bitter woman and make things difficult for him out of spite. But I didn't do any of that. I simply accepted his request calmly and asked for interest in a businesslike manner. It seemed that at that moment, Pablo finally realized that I had truly let go. The color drained from his face, replaced by a wistful, sorrowful expression. After a long while, he pressed his lips together, nodded, and said, "All right. I'll have my secretary draft the agreement and send it to you as soon as possible." "Sandra, you've changed a lot. I remember before." "Enough." I interrupted Pablo's rambling. He thought there were still good memories between us, but he didn't know that the moment he cheated, everything between us turned into a chocolate wrapped in shit. It might look fine, but it was disgusting in reality. I grabbed my bag and was about to leave when suddenly, a figure rushed into the room. Chapter 13. It was Oriana. Her hair was messy, her face pale. There were bloodstains constantly spreading on the blue and white striped hospital pants she was wearing. Oriana slowly approached Pablo, her voice hoarse. Why didn't you answer my calls? Do you know that I lost the baby? I had to have my uterus removed." Pablo looked her up and down with a disgusted expression. "The baby's gone. And it's gone. This is a public place. What's the matter with you? Get out of here." Oriana staggered a step, almost unable to believe her ears. "Do you even know what you're saying? Our baby is gone, and there won't be another. You've ruined my life, and you just brush it off like it's nothing? Pablo, do you have any conscience left?" "No conscience?" Pablo sneered. "Oriana, don't think I don't know. The batch of faulty parts was produced by your ex-boyfriend's company. You two have been in such close contact secretly, and whether the baby was mine or not is another matter. I didn't blow the whistle before because I was concerned about face. But you really think you can use a miscarriage to manipulate me?" Oriana paused, showing a guilty expression. She frantically shifted her gaze and finally looked at me. "Was it you? Sandra, was it you who leaked the information? Were you the one stirring things up?" Pablo immediately stood up and placed himself in front of me. "It has nothing to do with Sandra. There's no wall that doesn't let the wind through. I don't know who couldn't stand it and secretly sent me the evidence." He truly didn't know who sent the evidence, but one thing was clear: he had seen Oriana for what she really was. "You're protecting Sandra? Fine. Just divorced. And now you're hooking up again." Oriana's face twisted, her emotions agitated, and more blood soaked through her pants. "Sandra, you're the mistress. Shameless. Always trying to seduce other people's men." I looked at the crazed Oriana and found it amusing. The mistress calling the wife the third party? How could a person be this shameless? Enough. Before I could say anything, Pablo got angry. "Oriana, don't push your luck. It was you who used every trick in the book to seduce me. It was you who climbed into my bed. You're the mistress. I must have been blind to have ever chosen you. Now everything in my life and career is a mess. You're a jinx. Whoever gets involved with you is doomed. To be honest, I don't care about you losing the baby. I've got my own son and daughter. You, on the other hand, will end up being played and die alone in loneliness." "Beast! Bastard!" Oriana trembled with anger. You're completely heartless." I couldn't be bothered to watch them fight like two dogs, so I turned to leave. "Stop, Sandra. It must be you who incited Pablo to do this to me. It has to be." Oriana, driven mad by the frustration, grabbed the fork from the table and rushed at me, shouting, "You ruined me. No one's leaving here alive. Today we die together. Watch out! Before I could react, Pablo actually stepped in front of me. Thud! I widened my eyes as I saw the sharp fork stab into Pablo's neck. Bright red blood spurted out, splashing onto my face. Blocking the knife for Sandra? You really are a good man. Then die even more thoroughly. Oriana had completely lost it, and with the fork still in hand, she pushed it half an inch further into Pablo's neck. Chapter 14. What happened afterward is a blur to me. In the confusion, I rushed out of the room, called the police and the emergency services. When I came to my senses, I was already in the hospital. Oriana had been arrested, and Pablo was in critical condition. The doctor said the fork had severed Pablo's throat and artery, causing excessive blood loss and oxygen deprivation to his brain. They feared he wouldn't wake up easily. Even if he did wake up, it would take several years of recovery. The company's key employees heard the news and came to find me. They said the company was already on the brink, and now with Pablo injured, things were only getting worse. Having worked with Pablo to start the business, I knew the company's operations and processes and was familiar with most of the partners. They wanted me to step in and manage the company in Pablo's place, thinking that I had just lent Pablo some money, and if the company went under, my money would go down the drain. I agreed. The most important thing was that everything in the future belonged to my son and daughter, to ensure they could have a better life in the future. I decided to accept their request. When my son and daughter learned about Pablo's hospitalization, they came to see him. However, neither of them showed any emotional reaction. They stayed in the hospital for less than 10 minutes before returning to school for their classes. After that, they never came again. A year later, Oriana was sentenced to 7 years in prison for intentionally causing grievous bodily harm. Soon after the verdict, Pablo finally woke up from his coma, but he couldn't even get out of bed and would need long-term rehabilitation. At this point, I had gradually taken control of the company. After being persuaded by key personnel, Pablo signed an agreement transferring the company to me. From then on, I became the true owner of the company. Meanwhile, the short video account I managed gained hundreds of thousands of followers. Because I was so busy, my son and daughter helped manage it. The two of them also started their own account and gained tens of thousands of followers, so I didn't have to cover their living expenses. One day, after the second-year finals were over, my son and daughter came to the company to pick me up from work. I asked them, "How did the exam go?" My son adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and said calmly, "It's fine. I estimate I'll be in the top 10 of the grade. My brother is just being modest." My daughter was still as lively as ever, holding my arm and hopping around. Since high school started, when has my brother ever dropped out of the top 3 in the grade? I smiled and patted my daughter's head. "So, sweetie, how are your grades?" My daughter proudly shook her head. "Don't worry. Although I'm not as good as my brother, I'm definitely passing the first-tier university line." "So impressive? Then I'll treat you both to a big meal today." "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." "You're both the best. My precious babies." Looking at my beautiful, lively daughter and my handsome, steady son, I smiled genuinely. The two of them had grown up to be bright and excellent. With children like them, my life would undoubtedly be even better. Extra Story Luna. Chapter 1. In the previous life. At the same time, Dad asked Mom for a divorce. He also promised me and my twin brother that he wouldn't be like Mom, always controlling us. He promised he would give us freedom and provide us with a good life. Mom, who was always around us, constantly nagging and disciplining us, while Dad would go months without coming home. When he did come back, he would bring gifts for me and my brother. At the age when we were rebellious and didn't always listen, we happily chose to live with Dad. However, life at Dad's house wasn't as good as we had imagined. Oriana was pregnant and constantly clung to Dad. With the new baby, Dad didn't show as much affection for me anymore. He would always scowl and complain about me. "Girls should be obedient and quiet, not this noisy. I shouldn't have had you in the first place. Just go back to your mom." Oriana would also mock my brother. "Your little brother is still young. So what if he tore your homework and awards? You're really nitpicking. Just like your mother." She even sent me and my brother to a remote boarding school under the pretense of doing it for our good. She didn't even send the living expenses on time. My brother, at a time when he was growing, didn't have enough living expenses, so food became a problem. He was often so hungry that his stomach would touch his back, and his once high grades started to slip. I was even worse off. Sometimes, I couldn't afford sanitary pads. To save money for me, my brother even fainted from hunger in class. We weren't unaware of our situation, and we had tried telling Dad, but he was focused on his new wife and child. Even if he knew, he would only say a few words about Oriana, then brush it off. Afterward, we would face even worse retaliation from Oriana. So, my brother and I stopped complaining and silently endured the hunger and humiliation. The only thing that made us happy was that Mom often came to visit us. She never held a grudge for us choosing Dad over her. She still saved money and quietly gave it to me and my brother. However, to ensure Dad would take care of us properly, she had given up half of the marital property. So, she didn't have much money. The crumpled bills she gave us were obviously money she had saved for a long time. My brother and I regretted it deeply and wanted to make it up to her. But we were still just high school students and couldn't do anything. We hoped to graduate from college, find jobs, and repay her. But then, the accident came so suddenly. That day, after the second-year finals, it should have been Dad's driver coming to pick us up. But halfway through, Oriana called the driver away to take her shopping. My brother and I didn't even have enough money for a taxi. And without phones, we had to walk home. Halfway home, it was already deep into the night. A group of unemployed thugs spotted us and immediately surrounded us. They started groping me. My brother tried to protect me, but the thugs beat him to death with a brick, and I suffered at their hands too. We both died that snowy winter night. Chapter 2. At my and my brother's funeral, Dad was very lost. But that was all, just lost. Oriana, who had indirectly caused our deaths, pretended to be understanding and comforted Dad. Darling, don't be sad. Our child is doing fine. He will definitely be more outstanding than the children Sandra would have had. Dad was instantly comforted. Only Mom, crying uncontrollably over my and my brother's coffins. Her cries were so loud and so heartbreaking, it seemed like she was about to pass out. But Mom's heart-wrenching sorrow didn't bring any guilt to Dad. Instead, he found it embarrassing. Enough. Stop crying. Look at you. Half dead. Like a madwoman. Oriana, acting like the mistress, mocked Mom and told her to leave. Dad is dead. Why cry so much? Don't scare my child. Finally, overwhelmed by grief, Mom pulled a knife from the faded cloth bag she was carrying and charged toward Dad and Oriana. With tears streaming down her face, she shouted, "You killed my children. I will make you pay with your lives." Chapter 3. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the night Dad proposed the divorce. I turned to look at my twin brother, and I noticed the added weariness and maturity in his eyes. It was clear that my brother had also been reborn. The two of us rushed home as fast as we could. Sure enough, we saw Dad with a resolute expression and Mom on the verge of tears. My brother and I exchanged a brief look and immediately knew our roles. My brother would handle Dad, using whatever little remaining love and conscience Dad had left to fight for the greatest benefit for Mom. As for me, I would be the little cushion, comforting Mom's hurt heart. Afterward, we took good care of Mom and secretly gathered evidence of Oriana's excessive closeness to other men. We sent it to Pablo to stir up trouble between him and Oriana. This time, my brother and I would protect Mom. We swore to make her the happiest mother in the world.